I'm joined by Robin Wonsley. She's the minority leader of the Minneapolis City Council and an independent Democratic Socialist. Robin, thank you so much for being with us. Do you think that the protests that we've seen in Minneapolis and around the country, what's your take on the protests and what we've been seeing?
Yeah. So I think the protests are simply just a response to the ultimate issue, which is many communities since Trump has taken office have been under what we would describe as an occupation by federal ICE agents. And now, even in places like here in Minneapolis, we're seeing that expand to include different other federal law enforcement agencies like Border Patrol, who are all making life very challenging in the cities that they are occupying. Here in Minneapolis, not only are you now at risk of being shot and killed if you encounter a federal ICE agent, but they are making it very challenging for families to even get their children to schools. Minneapolis Public Schools had to shut down classes this week in response to ICE being here. Residents aren't able to get to their places of worship because they are at risk of being abducted and kidnapped by federal ICE agents. And also, people aren't able to get to work. We're seeing businesses close day by day across our city because people aren't able to patronize their businesses or open them up without having some very consequential interaction with federal ICE agents. And that's creating a lot of challenges for our city. Right now, we're approaching a looming eviction crisis for many of our residents who have not been able to make rent, and putting them in this dynamic of having to choose between keeping a roof over their heads or risk leaving their homes and getting snatched up by a mass agent with no due process. So in the next coming days, it's going to be incumbent upon elected officials like myself to really respond to the demands of these movements, get ICE out of Minneapolis, make sure Jonathan Ross, the federal agent responsible, is arrested and prosecuted. And I'm thankful to our leaders for leading their independent investigation to see that through. And in response to making sure our residents can stay in their homes, I will be bringing a eviction moratorium to demand that Governor Walz issues this executive order to keep people safe, which is something he can do today.
Councilwoman Wonsley, you just mentioned your calls for that ICE officer who shot and killed Renee Good to be arrested and charged. A moment ago, my colleague Martha Raddatz, she shared when she spoke with Senator Tina Smith, who is accusing the administration of a cover-up. What do you make of that? Do you agree?
Yeah, we're seeing many similarities to what played out here in 2020 when George Floyd was murdered. And, coincidentally, where Renee was shot and killed was not that far from where George Floyd was killed 6 years ago. That also triggered nationwide protests. And it all revolved around the role of law enforcement and the way that they police our communities in very consequential ways. And the similarities are clear. At that time, the city was positioning themselves to do a smear campaign against George Floyd to set up Derek Chauvin for clearance of any charges. And it took upon the public submitting documentation. Actually, a young woman by Darnella Frazier submitted the video that captured George Floyd's death that would ultimately land Derek Chauvin and his officers who were involved into prison. We're seeing the same thing here. The Trump administration is leading a smear campaign amongst Renee Good. They're claiming she's at fault. They've already are withdrawing access to evidence and basically obstructing fair investigation from pursuing. And we recognize that on the ground. And as opposed to allowing the Trump administration to move forward with that cover up, because that cover up is tied with the plan to then normalize federal ICE agents being able to come and invade cities all across the country and then be able to shoot and kill with impunity, as opposed to allowing that to be the new norm legally, which is what they're trying to do with Renee Good's case. We're not doing that. We're leading our own investigation. Our elected officials are committed to making sure that the federal agent that was responsible for Renee Good's murder is held accountable, prosecuted, arrested, just as we did with George Floyd's murder of Derek Chauvin and the other involved officers. So we've seen this play out, And community members have seen this play out, and they're willing to organize for justice, be it for George Floyd and also for Renee Good. So no other resident, be it here in Minneapolis or in Portland or in New York or New Orleans, will have to experience something like this.
And Councilwoman, we've certainly seen people around the country organizing, but particularly there in Minnesota. As you mentioned, in 2020, it was the focus of everything surrounding George Floyd. Now here again after the shooting of Renee Good. Do you feel like the administration has had a particular focus on Minnesota, not only from the presidential campaign leading up to the attacks on Democratic lawmakers? There's been a lot of a focus there on Minnesota.
And the Trump administration has been very blatant about it. They named Minnesota when they were announcing their plans to basically unveil this war of cruelty against U.S. civilians under the guise of immigration and going after criminals and bad guys in our communities to keep them safer. They name any places that have enacted, quote unquote, and this is not legally defined, but sanctuary ordinances, they would be targeting those cities. And we've seen them carry that out. Chicago was among those that they said they would go after, Los Angeles, and Minneapolis too, because we have been very consistent in defending and protecting our residents and making sure that we're assuring their welfare. Be it if you are a U.S. citizen, be it if you are a newly immigrated resident, be it if you are one of the youngest members of our societies, we care about your well-being. And when we see an injustice happens, we're going to do everything that we can to rectify it. And that includes seeing our federal government send out an illegitimate agency that should be abolished today, that is ICE, come into our communities and destabilize them and make it impossible for people to live normal lives, have a quality of life, and then kidnap and separate families. I am so proud of the fact that our communities continue to hold strong in demanding and protecting civil liberty, protecting the fabric of democracy, because that is not what this Trump administration is not interested in. And that is why places like Minneapolis continues to be a focal point for this illegitimate, racist, violent administration that is the Trump administration.
Minneapolis City Council Minority Leader Robin Wonsley, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.